Yeah, well, I mean, I think this week what everybody's hating is the Roe versus Wade leak that came out of the US and the questions about what that means for abortion care in Canada. Obviously, it's a huge, like the implications of it are huge, but as many people have pointed out, like people always should have been organizing beyond that decision. Like people should have been organizing to put other things in place because we know how fragile the court is. And it just depends on, Trump coming in and appointing three justices. So I just found that really interesting, right? That just the way we hold up the court space is like the only place we can find justice and the only decision that can guide our lives. And then almost neglect or forget to do the things outside it, even though, Roe versus Wade has been flashing for like so long as something that could be overturned.
I like the fact that the Prime Minister made a statement saying woman's body, women's choice. I like the fact that the President of the United States said women's body, women's choice. But how that's going to translate on the ground, because we know effectively women don't have access to safe abortions all over Canada right now. They certainly don't in the United States. And we know that Black and Indigenous women and young girls are often disproportionately impacted. And so while it sounds good when politicians say things like that, it really is disconnected from what's on the ground. And today, one of the ministers said, well, if Roe versus Wade gets overturned, American women can just come here, and I don't see why we can't do the procedure. Well, if they all had enough money to travel up here and they all had passports, for example, and they hadn't been previously criminalized and they have the money to pay for it, because I'm sure Canada's not going to do it for free, then we wouldn't have a problem. But that really is so detached from the very lived realities of impoverished peoples and racialized peoples and how they can access things like that.
And then you think of like in the Maritimes where like we just got abortion access in PI. People have been talking about abortion access in New Brunswick, like as if Canada has this flawless abortion access where everybody can just get abortions, like as if the waiting list isn't huge in many places. You can only get it in hospitals, so this is very typical Canada too, as well, that, again, we represent ourselves on the global stage as the refuge from the terrible problems of the US, forgetting how like we're still working on these issues too.
Yeah, and I think you raised a really good point, Elle, around not always just relying on the court or the fact that a decision's been made. Human rights are very fragile. You can work for decades to get human rights in place, and then it can be repealed in one day by a certain political party or a certain government. So we should never kind of rest easy that, a decision's been made or there's a piece of legislation, because it can change in a heartbeat. And that's why always having, boots on the ground, always having organizing, always having plan B, C, and D is important, especially for things like this.